Okay, so something huge just happened in New York City politics, and it's sending shockwaves way beyond the city itself. We're talking about a massive shift, and it's all centered on one guy, Zohran Mamdani. But his story, it's about so much more than just winning an election.
I mean, just look at this. Zohran Mamdani's victory wasn't just a win. It was a total game changer for what leadership in New York City looks like. He shattered multiple ceilings all at once. He's the city's first Muslim mayor, the first South Asian mayor, and the first mayor of Indian origin. Oh, and did I mention he's only 34? That makes him the youngest person to ever hold the job. This is a huge deal for a city that's always prided itself on diversity.
And get this, it wasn't even close. This was a decisive mandate. He was up against some political heavyweights, like former Governor Andrew Cuomo, and still pulled in over half the vote. Over 2 million people cast their ballot for a self-described Democratic Socialist. That tells you everything you need to know. Voters were screaming for a new kind of politics, one that actually uses the power of government to tackle inequality head-on.
So, who is the person at the heart of this political earthquake? Well, his journey is just as remarkable as his victory. It's a story that literally connects Africa, Asia, and North America. And believe me, it starts a long, long way from City Hall.
You know, his rise to power was incredibly fast, and it wasn't built on old-school political connections. It was all grassroots. He was born in Uganda to some pretty famous Indian origin parents and moved to New York when he was a kid. But the real turning point? It was his work as a housing counselor, down in the trenches, helping families fight eviction. That experience completely shaped his worldview and lit a fire under him, propelling him from a state assembly seat to the mayor's office in just 5 years.
So that background, it feeds directly into his core mission. His entire campaign was laser-focused on solving one single, urgent problem that millions of New Yorkers are struggling with every single day.
This was the question. His whole campaign slogan was about making New York affordable again. And he didn't just tip his hat to the cost of living crisis, he made it the absolute centerpiece of his entire platform. His answer wasn't about small tweaks. It was a set of really bold, sweeping proposals aimed squarely at lowering costs for working families. So what does that actually look like? Well, his platform was built on this core belief that government should step in and step in big to make life cheaper. We're talking about freezing rents for stabilized apartments, making all public buses completely free, guaranteeing childcare for every single kid, and even creating city-owned grocery stores to combat rising food prices. It's a vision for a city that really works for everybody, not just the wealthy.
But you can bet a platform that radical was going to stir up some trouble. As Mamdani's support started to snowball, the political and financial establishment launched a massive opposition campaign, painting him as this huge threat to the city's future.
And boy, did it create a divide. The language used was just intense. To his supporters, he was a badass who was clear, who didn't flip-flop. Even the governor praised his grace and courage and grit. But to his critics, he was a total fraud. You had tabloid headlines screaming "Scam Danny," and opponents calling him everything from a snake oil salesman to a communist.
And the attacks went all the way to the top. Former President Donald Trump jumped in, warning everyone that if Mamdani won, New York City would become a total disaster. It basically turned a local election into a national showdown. But here's the thing. Despite all that high-profile opposition, his core message about affordability just kept hitting home with voters. But then, in his victory speech, Mamdani did something really interesting. He took this local win and connected it to something much bigger, a global story about history, identity, and change. He quoted these incredible words from Jawaharlal Nehru's famous Tryst with Destiny speech, which was delivered right as India was gaining its independence. By using one of the most powerful speeches of the 20th century, he was saying, this isn't just an election win. He was framing it as a profound moment of transformation for the entire city, a step from the old into the new.
And what he was doing there? That's a perfect example of something called diaspora politics. It's this idea that communities of immigrants can shape the conversation not just in their new home, but also in their country of origin. Mamdani was literally using his Indian heritage to craft a brand new vision for New York's future.
This whole thing just forces a much more complicated conversation about identity. For a long time, the public image of the Indian diaspora has been pretty narrow. But Mamdani, a progressive, outspoken Muslim man of Indian descent who was born in Uganda, he just blows that whole narrative up. His success raises this really fundamental question. Who gets to define what a culture is on the world stage?
So in the end, Zohran Mamdani's victory isn't really just about policies or politics. It's about the power of telling a new story, one that challenges all the old ideas about leadership, identity, and who belongs. It proves that stories that were once pushed to the side can finally be heard. And it leaves you wondering, right? Which other stories, in which other cities, are just waiting for their moment?